MLB DFS is not truly back until we have ourselves a legitimate dilemma at pitcher. And tonight we've got exactly that. So we are fully back, everybody, because our question for tonight is, do we use one of the lower salaried pitchers who are in really good matchups and have some appeal themselves? Or do we pay up for Shane Bieber, who just had like 14 strikeouts in his first start this year, but in a tough matchup against the Minnesota Twins? That is going to be the dilemma that drives this slate. It's going to be a big one. It's one we will discuss right now. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down tonight's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. I had a question yesterday from Pierre asking about if we'll still be doing split slate podcasts for this year. Yes, we will. When we have bad main slates, I think I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but when there are main slates I'm not as enthused about, I will talk through the early only slate and go through some plays there. I think potentially could have gone that route for today because the games just before 7 p.m. are pretty good. So if you have any questions about the early only slate, I'm not sure if I'll have time to fully research it, but if you have questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter anytime at Jim Sonis. But once we get to different slates where the main slate may not be as appealing, we'll definitely be going with the split slate podcast, talking about both the early only and the main slates then. But for today, just the 8-game main slate, again, lock at 7:05. There is a slight potential for rain in Baltimore for the Yankees and the Orioles. They will definitely start that game on time. They should finish, but there is at least some question to that. So keep an eye on the time frame for the weather in Baltimore. No other rain on this slate. The only other weather note is that it is cooler, shockingly, in San Francisco for the Giants and the Padres. First pitch temperature, just 62 degrees. So as always, downgrade hitters there. It is about 82 in Los Angeles, so about 10 degrees warmer than it has been previously. So at least relatively arrows up for the teams out in Los Angeles for tonight. Before we take a look at the pitching preview for today, we have a lot of stuff going on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. You may have noticed this already, but we have got 6 sports in the podcast feed for this week. We had PGA earlier. That's already locked, or I guess it locks later today, but that's already set. MLB, obviously, you're listening to that right now. Tom Vecchio is doing an NBA podcast. The Daily ISO is back once again. Also adding an NHL podcast, the Daily Deke. That just went up last night. Both the Daily ISO and the Daily Deke will go up, shockingly, daily, every weekday, Monday through Friday. So check those out with Tom. Tom is an awesome NBA and NHL guy. Make sure you check those out and follow him on Twitter at DFS_Tom. I'm doing a NASCAR one later today, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, if you want to watch it live on the FanDuel YouTube page. And then, of course, we'll have our UFC podcast with Austin Swaim. That'll be posted later today, too. So 6 sports, like 5 podcasts in one day. What more could you possibly ask for? And, of course, that is in addition to our 4 p.m. Eastern show on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may find it. You can find us. Ask me questions about the slate that is going live once again tonight at 4 p.m. Eastern. But just in general, make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page and, of course, the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. For years, numberFire's premium subscription service has provided our users with expert analysis, survivor pool tools, and most importantly, the fantasy football draft kit, all for up to $49.99 a month. Now, as a way of saying thank you to our community for years of support, numberFire is rolling out a new premium package for just $9.99 a month that will provide you with all the sports betting and daily fantasy tools you need year-round. The best part is that expert analysis, the written content, the survivor tools, and yes, even the draft kit are now free. So our NFL rankings via myself, JJ Zachariason, and Brandon Gadula, they are all free. Head to numberFire.com to check out the new and improved site to take advantage of the new premium package. Pitching preview for this Thursday main slate. Shane Bieber is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel. He checks in at $10,700, followed by Dinelson Lamet. He is $9,200. Jose Barrios is also, actually, I guess he's $9,000. We got Jay Happ, Ross Stripling, and Dylan Bundy as the others above $8,000. And the big dilemma here revolves around Shane Bieber. So let's start with Bieber, talk through his situation, then talk through some alternatives if you don't want to go at a pitcher in such a tough matchup. We'll talk about the pros in a second, but first let's talk about why this is even a decision. Because if Bieber were facing most other teams, we just lock him in. But he's facing the Twins in Minnesota. Pretty tough assignments. Not only are they a good offense overall, they got a 119 WRC plus for the active roster last year against righties. That's the third best mark in the league. That's really tough. But they also don't strike out, just a 21% strikeout rate. That is the sixth lowest number. And that makes it tough for Bieber to truly go nuts against a lower strikeout team. But Bieber can still do that because he's Shane freaking Bieber and he can do whatever he wants. He had 97 pitches in his first start, which means he is fully stretched out, no pitch count concerns here. And he also really leaned on his curveball. He threw that pitch 37% of the time. He rarely got above 30% usage in single games last year. And the curveball was a plus pitch for him. It was not his best pitch if you look at the pitch info numbers over on FanGraphs, but it was a good pitch. So it's good that he's emphasizing that pitch quite a bit. The Twins are a really good team against curveballs. They ranked third last year, according to the numbers over at FanGraphs. But Bieber has so many other pitches to choose from. He has lots of plus pitches, which means if the Twins are on that curveball, he can just go to the slider. He can go to that changeup and change things up and try to deviate from whatever pitch they may be on for that night. That's the big advantage of someone like Shane Bieber having a pretty diverse arsenal. If we look at the 12 starts where Bieber has had that curveball usage on the rise, he has a 3.15 skill interactive ERA with a 31% strikeout rate and a 3% walk rate. So the plate discipline number is really good. I'm not going to go with Bieber in cash games because the Twins, there's a situation where they rock him because Bieber does let up a lot of hard contact and the Twins are happy to supply it as well. So not in cash games. But for tournaments, I do like Bieber. He is not my number one pitcher for tonight, but he is in my top three and someone I will use despite the matchup. So Shane Bieber, definitely someone I'm okay with for tonight despite the matchup, but he's not my number one pitcher. Instead, that guy is going to be Dinelson Lamet. Lamet came back from injury last year and looked pretty solid, but there was this question if he could actually carry those gains into 2020 at increased volume. The first start for Lamet made it look like the answer was a pretty resounding yes, because in that debut for 2020, Lamet had 8 strikeouts over 5 innings against the Diamondbacks. He threw his slider for more than half of his pitches, which is a huge number. Could be concerning at some point, but hey, for now, I mean, whatever. Lamet also kept using a sinker that he started to throw more as the season progressed last year, coming back from that injury. He got stretched out, added another pitch to try to change things up. And in 11 starts with that sinker being in play, Lamet has a 3.43 skill interactive ERA with a 35% strikeout rate. 35% strikeout rate is actually higher than Bieber's strikeout rate in his most relevant sample. And again, Lamet is facing the Giants rather than the Twins. The Giants' active roster at 89 WRC plus against righties with a 25% strikeout rate. It is a tremendous park for pitching, especially during this summer. Those are all the pros for Lamet. The one negative, and I don't even know if it's negative, the one con with Lamet is a pitch count because he went just 80 pitches in his first start this year. That's not a bad number, but it's not as high as Bieber at 97. He did get to 100 in a start last year. So even with the injury concerns with Lamet, the Padres will let him go. I'd probably project him around 90 or so pitches tonight, 90 or 95, because he's not fully stretched out. So he is a slight tick below Bieber in that spot. But high strikeout rate, great matchup, great park for pitching. I would expect Lamet to go nuts while he is out there. So I am in on Lamet, even while knowing there is risk he does not get the full 6 innings for a quality start. So I will put Lamet number 1, Bieber behind him, and Bieber might even be number 3. I think this is where I get the true dilemma, is do I rank Bieber number 2, or do I go with Ross Stripling, who is our third pitcher for tonight at $8,400? And Stripling, interesting case here, because last year, Stripling made 14 total starts for the Los Angeles Dodgers. In those 15 starts, he threw 90 or more pitches just twice the entire year. He has already topped that number once this year. He threw 92 in his first start. That would have been his second most pitches for the full season last year. And I think we should buy into Stripling tonight against the Diamondbacks with that pitch count potentially higher than where it was last year. Stripling has always been a good pitcher. I just haven't always used him in DFS because the volume wasn't great because of that low pitch count. We could also see that effectiveness go up this year for Ross Stripling in addition to the volume going up, which I'm kind of expecting based on his pitch count in that first start. Because last year, the worst pitch for Stripling was his slider. In his first start this year, he almost cut that slider out completely from his repertoire, instead amping up the usage on his changeup. And that led to really good things. Stripling had a 13.0% swinging strike rate. Now, that start did come against the Giants, and we mentioned how big of a matchup that is for Lamet, so we want to take those numbers with a grain of salt. But it was still awesome to see Stripling lean on his good pitches and feast as a result. We've seen Stripling kind of tinkering with this for a while now. He's been up in the usage on that change for a bit. Happened around July of last year, so July 2nd. As a starter since July 2nd last year, that's a sample on Stripling. It's 45 innings as a starter, which is not huge, but enough where I will look at it. And pretty nasty, 27% strikeout rate, 2% walk rate, 35% hard hit rate. So really good numbers across the board for Stripling. So to me, I think there's a possibility the volume could go up, and the efficiency within that volume could increase as well. Really fun combination for a guy who is $8,400. He's facing Arizona, as mentioned before. They're effectively a neutral matchup, but with the effectiveness and increased volume, that's enough for me to buy in. He's only $8,400. He is a good jump down from Bieber at 10.7 and Lamet at 9.2. I think I'm going to wind up putting Bieber second. So to me, I think the rankings for tonight are Lamet 1, Bieber 2, Stripling 3. But if you are really turned off by that matchup with Minnesota, I would not push back against you for a second if you want to jump down to Ross Stripling as your number 2 pitcher. Really good outlook for tonight. And I think that's someone you can easily justify and someone I will use for sure. We'll talk about one more $8,000 pitcher in things to watch as well. As far as stacking goes first, though, we have some flexibility to look at some different stacks here because Lamet is $9,200, and honestly, the hitting salaries are still pretty low. So you can use high salaried stacks even if you're using Lamet as your pitcher. So let's talk about the Yankees. I think this is a good time to check them out. They're facing John Means, and Means is coming off the injured list, which means generally not a great thing. He missed his first start due to a dead arm. Usually dead arm's not great if you're a pitcher, but hey, whatever. He's coming off the injured list, and this is a guy who tends to skate on pretty thin ice anyway. So if you take away anything from his repertoire, things could go south in a pretty big hurry because Means needs to limit hard contact in order to be viable as a pitcher. He's a big-time changeup guy, which helps him keep that hard contact in place, but it also allows him to give up a ton of balls in play. Over the final 14 starts last year for Means with heavy changeup usage, he had a 5.34 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate was 17% with a 5% walk rate. And it's not as if Means is a ground ball guy. Sometimes when you see pitchers with low strikeout rates, they're able to get by because they keep the ball on the ground. That's not the case for Means. He lets up a lot of fly balls, but he just keeps them in the yard. That can work at times. And as he showed last year with a decent ERA, it can work for a full season as well. I'm just not sure it'll work against this specific team with all the big boppers the Yankees have in their lineup. Means faced the Yankees twice in that aforementioned 14-game split, and he allowed 4 runs in one of them. He allowed 6 earned runs in the other. So it's just kind of hard to live on that many balls in play against a team with as much power as this. So I think the Yankees are the top stack of the night and should provide some value too. They faced a lefty back on Sunday, and in that game, they had Luke Voit batting 5th, and they had Giovanni Urshela batting 6th, and Miguel Andujar was batting 7th. Voit and Urshela both had good batted ball numbers against lefties last year, so I am in on them. Luke Voit is $2,800. Urshela is $2,600. As far as Andujar, I'll probably be lower on him until his timing is back from missing all that time. So I think that if you're looking for cheapies within the Yankees, Voit or Urshela definitely fit that. Gary Sanchez is $2,900. Gleyber Torres is $3,100. You can get to all these guys really easily, and I would like to do so because I think that the appeal in them is really high for this matchup with John Means. Other stacks for tonight, another potential outlet for some value could be, shocker, the Mets against the Red Sox, because this time they are facing Martin Perez, and Perez really struggled last week. He had an 8.3% swinging strike rate. He had just 2 strikeouts compared to 2 walks over 5 innings, and that's not great because it came against the Orioles. He did lean hard on his cutter, and that's a pitch that Perez had been going away from last year as the season went along. But he threw it 42% of the time last week. If we look back to last year when in starts where Perez leaning more on that cutter, it actually happened earlier in the year rather than later. So kind of an old sample, but when Perez leaned more on that cutter, a 4.74 skill interactive ERA with a 20% strikeout rate and a 36% hard hit rate. I'm not expecting Perez to magically become an ace. With this cutter being used, I think that we can expect him to still allow a lot of balls in play, and the batted ball suppression has not been as good for Perez as it was back in the day. So I think the Mets, once again, a team we want to stack, especially because they can hit lefties. 110 WRC plus against lefties based on their active roster last year. So going right on back to the Mets once again tonight. I'm going to keep on using J.D. Davis until they adjust his salary, because Davis is a good hitter overall, but against lefties in his career, a 49% hard hit rate. He does hit more ground balls than he would like, but he's $2,400, probably going to bat in the middle part of that order. He is a righty. I'm not going to complain. So I'd prioritize Davis over Yoenis Cespedes, even though Cespedes did have a home run last night, still striking out a lot to start the year, kind of what you would expect given the long layoff and a lack of a real ramp up here. So Davis over Cespedes among the value plays, but both them very much options. Ahmed Rosario also an option too, depending on where he hits. So definitely a lot of value within this Mets team if you need help getting up to Shane Bieber. So if you find yourself with your Mets stacks, you got your value there, or maybe you're going with some of the cheaper Yankees, and you got some salary to burn, I think this is a good spot to go at the Los Angeles Angels. Mentioned it's a little bit warmer in Los Angeles for tonight. That's a good thing. And they're also in a similar spot to the Yankees, where they're facing a guy who generally does a good job of limiting hard contact, but allows a ton of balls in play. And that guy is Marco Gonzalez. Gonzalez had a 3.99 ERA last year. It's not bad, but ERAs can be deceptive. We should put more stock in peripherals. And last year we saw Gonzalez's strikeout rate fall to 17%. So even with the 3.99 ERA, his skill interactive ERA was 5.08. We did see Gonzalez make adjustments last year. I'm assuming it was trying to get some more strikeouts because he cut down on his cutters and his sinkers and threw more four-seam fastballs instead. And he did that in the opener this year too. So if you look back at the past 12 starts for Gonzalez with more four-seamers, his strikeout rate, you would expect it to go up. Instead, it's actually gone down to 16%, and his Sierra is inflated to 5.29. That's not great, and he's also going on the road here. And Gonzalez tended to do a lot better at home than he did on the road last year. If you look at him last year on the road, he allowed a 39% hard hit rate compared to a 29% hard hit rate at home. The Angels have some big-time hitters. They could punish him, so sign me up for sure for this Angels team. And again, I think you can get to guys like Trout and Anthony Rendon. I think you can get there, but they also have some value plays. Justin Upton is $2,700, had a 49% hard hit rate and a 46% fly ball rate versus lefties last year. Strikeouts, always a concern for Upton, less so when it's a guy like Gonzalez on the mound who doesn't get as many strikeouts. So Upton, $2,700, good salary saver there. David Fletcher does hit the ball harder against lefties and righties. I'm generally not a big Fletcher guy, but hey, tonight I think it could work. And even Albert Pujols last year, a 37% hard hit rate and a 45% fly ball rate against lefties. He had a home run on Tuesday, only $2,600. So if you use guys like Upton, Fletcher, Pujols, or two of the three, it makes it easier to get two guys like Rendon and like Trout. And I think for tonight, I can get there, and I would love to do so for sure. Let's finish up here with things to watch. The one other pitcher who I like for tonight, who is around the same salary range as Stripling, is Dylan Bundy. And I know a lot of you are probably groaning right now. You may have thrown whichever device you are listening to because Dylan Bundy's been bad for a while. But there are some reasons to be interested. Stop if you've heard this before. The first thing for Bundy is the matchup with the Mariners. That's not something that's normal for Bundy. The Mariners, an 88 WRC plus against righties, 26% strikeout rate. That strikeout rate is the second highest on this slate. I also really like the pitch mix that Bundy showed in his Angels debut. He threw his four-seam fastball just 36% of the time. He has a terrible fastball, so you want that number as low as possible, so 36% is a good number. He got a 12.2% swinging strike rate in that game, and it came against the Oakland A's, who are a much better team than the Mariners. So Bundy is fourth among the pitchers for to me, but I think that he is a firm enough fourth where I actually do want to use him. I don't want to spread things out too much at pitcher because I want to put myself in position to benefit if certain situations go off. But I do think it is worthwhile to go with Bundy, potentially get that fourth pitcher in there for tonight because all four pitchers really do have a path to a ceiling day. I think that the Orioles weren't worth considering within the top three stacks, but I do think you could use some of them against Jay Happ. Happ took a pretty big step back last year. He started allowing hard contact, and Happ didn't really do that in the past, always was pretty good in that department. And that made his lack of strikeouts more concerning. When you don't get strikeouts, you need to suppress hard contact. He didn't do either really last year. We got Austin Hayes, Renato Nunez, Anthony Santander, all really solid options here. So I think that the Orioles, at least an option if you need some value. I will use Hunter Alberto if you're using him in a stack. But in general, I think these guys could be potential one-offs facing Happ for tonight. Finally, I think the Royals are another spot I'm okay with going as from a stacking perspective as they're facing Ivan Nova. Nova generally has done a good job of limiting hard contact, but he gets no strikeouts. Over his past 24 starts, he has a 14% strikeout rate and a 6% walk rate, which means he allows a ball in play. I'm avoiding hit by pitches here, but we'll just put it at 80% of the time. That's a huge number. So I think we can use hitters against Nova. We've seen a lot of struggles for Adalberto Mondesi so far this year. He's got a 40% strikeout rate, but he is hitting the ball hard when he happens to make contact, and he's only $2,600. So I am okay with using Mondesi, whether it's a one-off, he's $2,600 at shortstop, or within a Royal stack. I think that Mondesi eventually will get things going. I want to be there when he does because a lot of single game upside for that guy. That is all the time that we have for today. Again, the big decision for you to make on this slate is, do you go Bieber in the tough matchup? Do you go Lamet against the Giants? Do you go Stripling, Bundy? You've got options. So take some time, think them through, and try to decide which route you want to play things based on your individual process for MLB DFS. If you have any questions about that, be sure to tune back in at 4 p.m. Eastern today to check out our YouTube and Twitch show, answering questions live on the air that you may have leading into that night's slate for MLB DFS. If you have questions before then, you can hit me up on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. And again, a lot of big stuff popping on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. So make sure you check that out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, the Google Play Store, iHeartRadio. I think we're on radio.com. You can kind of go anywhere. You can find the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for whatever your DFS needs may be. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for on the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And of course, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineup for tonight. Good luck making those decisions at pitcher. We'll talk to you again this afternoon and also tomorrow to wrap up the week. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.